Hello, welcome to our sixth segment on meditation. Today we're going to be taking a much different approach than we did in the last two. In our last two segments we looked at Lectio Divina, in which we meditated on a word or a phrase which came to us from the Scriptures themselves. Today we're going to take a whole story and meditate on it as a way of coming into God's loving and healing presence. We began this series by saying that meditation is an adventure into deeper relationship with God. And this particular approach to meditation, the use of our imagination in meditation, certainly can be an adventure into whole new ways of noticing how we are in relationship to God. And so today we are going to meditate using guided imagery. Meditation using guided imagery. Once again, we will be basing our guided imagery on the Scriptures, and I'm going to eventually be using chapter 5 of the Gospel of John. If you have a Bible and you'd like to take that out and put it close by, if you want to follow along, you can, but you don't need to have the Bible in front of you while I am doing this with you. You will eventually need it to do it on your own. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to actually meet Jesus, to hear him teach, to feel the touch of his hands? Have you ever wanted to be present to those powerful mysteries of Jesus' life which form the core of our faith? To do so through the use of your imagination is another approach to Christian meditation, which is very, very much a part of our tradition. This form of meditation is known as meditation with guided imagery and has been helpful to those wanting to open their hearts to God for many, many centuries. It was particularly popularized in the Christian tradition by a priest whose name is Ignatius of Loyola, who lived in the 16th century. Ignatius believed that meditation could help us to grow in intimacy and knowledge of Christ through seeing ourselves in those very scenes which are presented in the Scriptures. So the great adventure for Ignatius was that through the use of our meditation and through the use of our imagination, we would enter right into the scenes that we see depicted in the Gospels. Very simply put, the one who meditates reads a passage or a story from Scripture, then takes the time to become attentive, and in their own imagination then, the one who is meditating reconstructs the scene about which he has just read, and takes the time to see and hear the actions and the dialogues and the possible feelings that are occurring in that passage from Scripture. For example, if we were to take the story of the man who was crippled at Bethsaida, then we would see ourselves at that pool when Jesus comes, and we would participate in his conversation with the crippled man. We would participate in the man's healing in some way. Perhaps we would take on the role of an onlooker, or perhaps we would be the man or the woman, him or herself, who was sitting by the pool and in need of healing. At some point, we might even take upon the role of Jesus as our own hearts are converted, as we become more and more like the Christ we seek to follow. We would have direct access through our imagination to Jesus, to his words, to his compassion, and to his healing presence. A word about imagination. Some of us may feel as though we have no imagination. Sometimes we think that that's reserved or limited to childhood or just to other people. But indeed, everyone uses their imagination every single day of their lives. When we get up in the morning, we imagine what our day is going to be like. We project our thoughts into the future. It may or may not come about, but we think about it. We imagine it. When we select our clothes, we imagine what we will look like in that particular shirt or skirt. We imagine how our whole ensemble might be the best one for that particular day or not. And so we're always imagining, we're always thinking about what could be. And so we don't have to move too far from imagining ourselves dressing in the morning to imagining ourselves in the pictures and in the stories that are given to us in the gospel. So this is at the essence of guided meditation, a desire and a willingness to use all of ourselves, every aspect of what makes us human, to enter into relationship with God. And certainly our imagination can do that. Jesus himself invited us always to use our imaginations. He gave us the wonderful parables, the stories, and asked us to experience some truth in a new way through his use of the stories of the coin, of the seed, of the building of the tower. All of these were an invitation to use our active imagination to come into greater relationship with Christ. And so I am going to now lead you in a meditation using the active imagination, and then you can do this for yourself as well. So once again, if you want to follow along in the story, we will be reading John chapter 5, verse 1. And then we will be setting the scriptures aside, and I will actually help you to enter into the scene of the story that we read. So again, come into your uncluttered space. Take some time to arrange your scriptures before you. Take some time to pause, to recollect yourself. That means to regather all the fragments that might be spinning off somewhere else. Take some time to breathe. Ask God to make you open and aware of God's presence during this time of meditation. And hear the story first. So the first thing we're going to do is to read the story as it appears in the scriptures, and then we're going to go back and enter into the scene of the story. After this, there was a festival of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now in Jerusalem, by the sheep gate, there is a pool, which in Hebrew is called Bethesda, which has 5 porticos. In these lay many invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I am making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me." Jesus said to him, "Stand up, take up your mat, and walk." At once the man was made well, and he took up his mat and began to walk. So let's see how we can enter into this scene and to meditate upon it using both a literal approach, a personal approach, and an approach which brings us into greater relationship with the community of the world. So put aside your scriptures now and simply close your eyes. I do find with this kind of meditation it's most helpful to close your eyes. So close your eyes and take a moment to breathe. So breathe in through your nose, hold your breath, and exhale. And now we will reconstruct the scene. In your mind's eye, in your imagination, see yourself by a large pool of water. Take a moment to look at the water. What color is it? Is it blue or green? A muddy brown? And breathe. Begin to relax into the scene. You notice that there are many people around this pool of water. Feel yourself in this group. Perhaps there are men and women, children, and so there's a large pool of water with many people milling about the pool. Take a moment to simply see that pool of water and all those many people milling about the pool. Some of them may be talking. Some of them may be calling out to God, asking the angel to come down and ruffle the waters. Some of the people may be silent and quiet. What about yourself as you come to this pool? What are your own needs? What are you moved to do? To call out? Are you moved to ask God for healing? And then you see a man. Take a moment to see the man lying at the side of the pool. He's lying on a mat. He's come there for 38 years in search of healing. In your own life, what is your own need for healing? Are you in need of healing of relationship, healing in faith, a healing of hope, healing in the area of any of the virtues? Take a moment and become conscious and aware of your own need for healing. Now, as you continue to be present at the side of the pool, near the man who's lying on the mat, suddenly there's a little flurry. People are parting, stepping aside, and you see the person known as Jesus approaching. In your mind's eye, take a moment to see Jesus. Imagine Jesus however you may imagine Jesus. There's not a correct way or a wrong way. Take a moment to see Jesus' face, his clothing. He may look like someone you know. He may look like he's garbed in modern dress. Take simply a minute to look at Jesus and to notice that Jesus is already looking back at you, looking back at the man at the side of the pool. See Jesus. Know his warmth, his compassion, his desire to be there with those who are in need of healing. And breathe. And breathe. And hear again the words of Scripture. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew he had been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" Hear those words again. Do you want to be made well? There's always consequences for becoming well. Hear those words in your own heart. Do you want to be made well? What is your reply to Jesus? The man said, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I am making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me." What are your own reasons for not being well? What are some of the conditions of your own need for healing? Hear Jesus say again to the man, "Stand up, take up your mat, and walk." Again, can you hear those words in your own life? Stand up, take up your mat, and walk. And breathe. What are the implications in your life for standing up, taking up your mat, and walking? And breathe and relax and feel yourself at the pool. Experience the details of the water, the movement of the crowd, the man in need of healing, and your own need for healing. Once again, be close to Jesus and hear what Jesus says to the man as though he is saying those words to you. And breathe and relax. And simply be quiet now, as we did in the Oratio when we practiced Lectio Divina. Simply be quiet and receive, allowing God to enlarge in your capacity to receive God's love, God's healing, and God's presence in your life. And so we begin to come to the end of our program on meditation. We remember that at the core of meditation is God's invitation to us to come into deeper relationship with Him. This is something that we desire. This is something God desires for us. And we can help ourselves to meditate. We can have a quiet place, a sacred place into which we enter to become aware of who we are in relationship to God, become more aware of the many ways in which God is inviting us to participate in His divine life. We can certainly turn to the Scriptures as words of life, as a way to increase our capacity to receive God, savoring the words, allowing the words to grow within us to affect all of the actions of our lives. We can also enter into the sacred word with other people, allowing others' insights to help us to grow. And finally, our meditation can also include entering into the very mysteries of Christ's life as they're depicted in Scripture, so that we can receive the many, many graces and blessings that God wishes to give to us. At its heart, meditation is meant to help us to grow in relationship with a God who longs for us and who calls to us in each and every aspect of our lives. Thank you very much.